This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchione and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I am Bill Marchione, flying solo today without Carol Lawrence. She's off doing holiday stuff with family, and I'm taking this opportunity to do a solo episode, kind of giving myself the opportunity to share on some of the things that have come up for me in recent days, and also seeing if I still have the chops left over from when I was on the radio in my younger days, and sitting in front of a microphone by myself and talking for long periods of time just didn't seem like it was a thing. It's much easier to do when there is a group or when there's a partner, somebody to have the conversation with. But we're going to talk about practical prayer in a perspective that it comes up a lot for me in the classes and in the work that I do individually doing prayer sessions with people. Because the process, practical prayer itself, is just ridiculously simple. It is a very simple, very streamlined process. There's 5 steps. And it's really very easy to learn the 5 steps and the additional 2 steps that you use when the 5 steps don't seem like they're going to kind of clear the bar for whatever you're bringing into your experience. So the process is very simple. And in the book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, it only takes a few pages to lay out exactly what the steps in a practical prayer are. So simple. Yes, it is very simple. But people point out, yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy. And that is correct. It is not easy. There are a few really, really important things about transforming your life using prayer, especially using practical prayer, where you're not turning your attention to some force outside of yourself and begging for a favor. This is all an inside job. This is all an infinite creative power that dwells within. And it's not always easy to turn away from our problems and turn toward the solution and invite something new and different into our experience. One of the analogies that I use is for athletes, and that's a great example. So if somebody wants to bench press, pick a number, 300 pounds, 250 pounds, 110 pounds, whatever is out of reach for you right now. The process for doing that is pretty straightforward. You, first of all, learn the technique for bench pressing weight, which is to get on the bench and position the weight above you, and then use your muscles in a controlled and concerted and focused way to lift the weight to the height that they're going to be, and then to let them come back and put the weight back on the stand. And the idea then is to continue doing that and do the certain number of repetitions so that you build up your muscles, and then after a certain amount of time, then you increase the weight and you continue doing the repetitions. And you go through that process again and again and again and again until you have built up enough muscle and perfected the technique to the point where you can lift 300 pounds or 250 pounds or 110 pounds or whatever it is. And the process is as simple when we're lifting 300 pounds as when we're lifting 50 pounds, but it's not easy to get there. There's a lot that we need to add on. There's a lot that we need to build up. There's a lot that we need to get out of the way of. And we need to make sure that the technique is good, because we've all heard about people who are trying to do something like that and they wind up injuring themselves because they try to do too much too soon. Gymnastics is another great example. So is figure skating and ballet. It looks so easy. It looks effortless. Performing magic tricks. The magician makes it look easy. It's not easy. It's not easy to do that. The process might be simple, the trick might be simple, but getting the nuance so that it looks the way that we want it to look, so what's being presented to the world around us looks the way that we want that to look, and it's received that way. The gymnast being able to do all of the techniques that are required to put their body in the position where it's going to do what they want to do, Might be very simple, to explain and describe, but not easy to do. It takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of dedication, takes a lot of focus. The same thing is true in all sorts of areas of life where we want to create something new, where we want to change something, where we want to have some transformation or some growth. The process itself might be simple, might not be simple, it might actually be pretty complicated. But whatever the process is, we have to keep at it. We have to be persistent. We have to let go of the fact that it's going to be easy and bring our full self to it, bring our presence to it, and allow that channel to open to bring in the goodness that we're looking for. Same thing with practical prayer. The process itself is simple. It is not always easy to do. So I'm going to start by going over the steps in a practical prayer and how we do them. And then a little later, we're going to get into some of the details and the nuance on how we get over the parts that seem really hard. The first step in a practical prayer is recognition, where we turn our attention to the awareness of that infinite creative power that creates everything. A lot of people just use the word God. That's pretty easy, because God is a 3-letter word that most people understand what it means. And it works as long as you understand that God, that divine creative power that creates everything, dwells within. When we turn our eyes to God and we look up towards the clouds, past the sky, we're looking in the wrong direction. God is there, but God is everywhere. And to really demonstrate to ourselves that we've got it, what we want to do is be able to close our eyes. When I say look for God, then you close your eyes and you go within and know that that divine creative power that creates everything has created you. That divine creative power is everything. The first step is that recognition of that one infinite creative power, and it's already leading into the second step, which is unification, where we understand that that one creative power abides within. It is in me as well. It is in the mind and the body and the existence of the person who is doing the prayer. We are all one. The first 2 steps are about identifying that creative power and identifying that we have it, that we are it, that we are using it, so that we can set up the third step, which is our realization step, where we're going to claim the new experience of goodness that we're looking for. Once this prayer has happened, what will be in my experience? And that's what we're going to be claiming. And that recognition step, that realization step, the affirmation that we are doing as part of our practical prayer is the same as an affirmation that we do in self-help or a manifesting process where we're just claiming the good that we're looking for. And it should follow some particular structure. We like to have the 4 P's in there. It should be positive, powerful, personal, and present tense. And going over those individually. Powerful means that we want to state it in the most powerful possible language. I have prosperity now, rather than I am someday going to maybe have a little bit more money than I have today, or I'm going to be done with the struggling sometime soon. We want it to be a powerful statement. We want to be claiming the good that we're looking for right now. It needs to be positive. If what I'm looking for is prosperity, I want to be talking about prosperity. I want to be talking about the experience of abundance that I'm inviting into my life, rather than the experience of poverty or not enoughness or lack that I've been having up until now. So we want it to be positive. We want to be talking about what we want to have. The infinite creative power that creates everything doesn't know not. It doesn't know not sick, not lonely, not helpless. It knows yes, and it's going to say yes to whatever good, to whatever we're claiming. It'd be great if all we ever claim is good. It's going to say yes to whatever's in our belief system. It needs to be personal. So it's not going to be there's something out there that's going to make my life happy. No, we want to make it about ourselves. I have this happy experience now. I am loved. I am prosperous. I am healthy. I am comfortable. I am in the flow of my good right now. We want to make that be a personal statement about ourselves so that we can experience and invite what it is that we want to have in our lives. And the other one, which is a little slippery, is present tense. Because the universe doesn't know not. The universe also doesn't know later. Stuff either happens or it doesn't happen. So if we want something to happen for us to unfold in sweet perfection, so the wedding that's coming up in a month, we want that to be a perfect experience. We don't want to say that wedding will be perfect. We want to say that wedding is already perfect. That is already unfolding in sweet perfection. That's happening now. The goodness of that wedding is happening now, even if the experience of it isn't coming along for another month. It doesn't all need to happen now, but we're opening the channel for it now, and the claims that we are making are all present tense. This is the good that I'm inviting now. Even when we're doing a blessing for a meal, we don't say this is going to be a good meal. This already is a good meal, and we enjoy it, and we celebrate it, and we connect with it, and it feeds and nourishes and uplifts us. So we want to be able to say whatever that claim that we're making in the person, in that present tense. So the 4 P's again: powerful, positive, personal, and present tense. And that's the third step in the prayer. And the next thing that we want to do, now that we've claimed this good, knowing that that infinite creative power that creates it all is already creating this goodness for us, we want to go into gratitude. Thankful for this wonderful goodness that's already happening. This thing that I have defined and explained and described in my prayer, the claim that I have put upon that infinite creative power, I know it's already creating this. So what else to feel but thanks? So thankful, so grateful, so deeply, deeply grateful for the good that's already happening. So next to last step in the prayer is about that feeling of gratitude, being thankful for the good that's already showing up in our lives. And once we've expressed our gratitude, the last step in the prayer is release. This is not something that uses our willpower. This is not something that we are creating in our own minds. There's an infinite creative power that is creating this. And once we have set that creative power into motion, we let it go. The analogy that we use is if you're gardening and you want to grow pumpkins, you're going to prepare the soil, you're going to plant a pumpkin seed, you're going to cover it up, you're going to water, you're going to make sure that it's taken care of, and you're going to go away. You're going to release it. You're going to let it go. You're not going to go back and dig up the pumpkin seed and make sure that it's growing properly. In the same way that we're not going to go back and check and make sure that the infinite is growing whatever it is that we want to be growing in our lives. We're going to let it go, know that it's happening, and be able to move on. So those are the 5 basic steps in a practical prayer. Recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release. And there are 2 extra steps in there. If you get to the end of the realization step, if you say the affirmation where you say, I'm prosperous, and the little voice in the back of your head says, nah, I've seen the bank balance. Prosperous is not something that has anything to do with me. That's doubt speaking. And some people think that that's an expression or an example of failure. It is not. When our doubt speaks up, it's actually showing us what we believe. So in the case where we make a claim on that infinite power that creates everything, I am prosperous, I am loving, I am healthy, I am comfortable. And the voice comes in and says, yeah, but you still can't get off the couch and walk. Or, yeah, but you can't do this. Or, yeah, but this is a problem. That's the voice that's telling us what we actually believe. And at that point, what we want to do is identify that that doubt has no power of itself. That doubt is the shadow showing up that's blocking the light. There's something in the way of that divine light of goodness that we have been talking about that's keeping it from showing up in our lives. And it's that doubt or disbelief. So what we want to do in the next step in the prayer, that first R, is we want to refute that. This idea that I can't have prosperity, that I can't live in a life of abundance, is completely untrue. This is an infinitely abundant universe, and all the good that's available everywhere is available to me, and I am claiming my good right now. And that repetition of that realization step, that repetition of the affirmation, is the extra that extra second R. So if we come up with doubt, we want to refute whatever it is that's making us doubt that the good is available to us, and then we want to reaffirm the good that we're claiming. And once we've done that affirmation again, we get to go into the gratitude step and the release. And if the doubt comes up again, then we go through the refutation and the reaffirmation again, and we can continue going through that cycle as many times as is necessary to clear our consciousness, to get rid of the doubt, or to convince us that we're praying for something that's way past what we can possibly believe. So in addition to being therapeutic, where we're creating a newness in our lives, where we're changing our experience, it's also diagnostic. A practical prayer is showing us what our belief system actually holds, because as you've probably heard, it's done unto you as you believe. Not the way that you want to believe, not the way that you think, not the way that you say, not the way that your bossy mind is trying to push things around, as you believe. So if we understand that we are asking for something that we don't actually believe, then it becomes pretty clear that what we're going to get is not what we're asking for, but what we actually believe that we're going to get, what we believe that we deserve. So with that information, we are able to fine-tune the prayer, tweak the realization or the affirmation that we're doing, or understand that we need to go back and work on our belief system a little bit so we can claim the good that we've been saying that we want to have in our lives. In any case, the last two steps that we end with are gratitude and the release step. And as I started by talking about in this episode, this is very simple. That process is very simple. It took me a few minutes to explain the whole process. It is not easy, especially when the stuff that we are praying for, the things that we want to change in our lives, seem like they're big. So let's take a break. And when we continue, we'll talk about how we deal with the big stuff and make it more manageable.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I am Bill Marcione, flying solo this week. Carol has the week off, so I get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which of course is practical prayer, and specifically focusing on the notion that it is simple, but not easy. And I want to do a quick shout out. There is a live class that we're doing in January. It starts on January 9th. It's 4 Thursday evenings, and it's called Learn to Do Healing Like Jesus. And the idea is that the same technique of practical prayer is the healing technique that Jesus used and was described very thoroughly in the New Testament. And what we're going to do is go back into the source material and identify exactly where we are told how this process works, what the technique is. And if you are very comfortable with practical prayer, then it'll give you some context for where that shows up in Scripture. And if, on the other hand, you're very comfortable with Scripture, it will show you that the Scripture is actually telling you how to do something, which is what I'm telling you today is simple, but not easy. Yes, it is a transformational process, and you are invited to come along. The information is on the website at be-the-light.com, be-the-light.com, or at newthoughtphilly.org, which is where I keep all the stuff for my teaching and ministry sorts of things. So we're talking about practical prayer and the 5 steps or the 7 steps in a practical prayer, which are simple. And they're very simple. I can outline them in the book in a few pages. They're not easy to do. And the reason they were not easy to do is you kind of alluded to when I was talking about that it's a 5-step process, except when we have doubt, in which case it becomes a 7-step process or a 9-step process, because when the doubt shows up, we have to refute whatever the doubt is and then go back to the affirmation. And if it shows up again, then we get to repeat the process by refuting and reclaiming the affirmation. And we get to continue going through that process because it's going to happen as we believe it happens. And if I barrel through and I insist that I am prosperous or I am loved or I have my perfect, wonderful, loving relationships or I am healthy and comfortable, and I don't believe it's true, I don't have evidence that it's true, and I don't necessarily think that that's what's going to be showing up in my life next, then what shows up in my life next is the experience that I believe I'm going to have rather than the one that I'm claiming now. So the process for identifying that is built into the prayer by allowing ourselves to listen to that still small voice that says, yeah, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. To listen for the doubt showing up in our mind when we make that claim on the infinite. Because it's one infinite creative power. It's one divine presence. It's one love that's sharing itself as everything. It is just as easy for the infinite to create a life of harmony and uplift and love and connection and peace and joy for us as anything else. And if we're not experiencing that, and we are wanting to invite that infinite creative power to change the experience that we're having and bring in something new, We first need to change our thinking about it. We need to believe that it's possible. We need to open ourselves up to that possibility and bring in something new. Now, in a lot of cases, that's going to involve changing some of the activities that we've had. If we have always been doing the same thing and we've been always getting the same result, maybe what we want to do is change what we've been doing to invite a different result. It is possible that as I make the claim for I am prosperous, and simultaneously I spend more money than I earn, and I keep on making commitments for financial obligations that I can't possibly keep up with under the current circumstances, I can claim all the prosperity and abundance in the world that I want to, and it's not going to work because I'm not behaving in accordance with that. One of the points that I've often made on the Practical Prayer podcast is that when we are having an experience of lack or insufficiency, our immediate thought is, I need to make more money. What possibly we want to do is change our circumstances so that we need less money, so we're using less money. If we are living within our means, if the income and the finances and the financial support that's available is enough to meet our needs and some excess, that's all that's required. There are people who are spending millions of dollars a month to support their lifestyle, and they could probably get by with a very reduced lifestyle, which is not going to impact them that much and require an awful lot less money. Now, if they've got a couple of $1 million a month to spend, then have at it. There's no critique or judgment about that. But it's not like that level of spending is necessarily going to be required to live a happy life. Same thing with us. There might be a different way of doing this. There might be a different way of approaching this. There might be a different way of sharing our gifts in such a way that we can bring that goodness into our lives. I met a fellow once who was living in a slum, and he was strung out on drugs and alcohol, and all he wanted to have happen is he wanted everything to be better. He wanted to be clean and sober. He wanted to live a life of luxury. He wanted to be on yachts and private airplanes and mansions and just be living the high life. And he really didn't feel like going out and earning all of that stuff and having those jobs. But he knew that there was a possibility that was open to him. So he set the intention for the transformation to come along. And he said, whatever it takes for this to happen, I'm doing it. And his family came and plucked him out of there and sent him to rehab and got him cleaned up. And so he was no longer addicted and he was no longer drinking. He was sober. And the family had a sailboat in the Caribbean, so they brought him down. So he's sailing around the Caribbean on the sailboat, being taken care of. And it was a pretty nice lifestyle. And he's realizing, hey, this is what I was talking about. It has nothing to do with what I had in mind. I thought I was going to be the captain of my own ship, but it doesn't matter. I just as soon be on somebody else's ship. And he'd been living in New York, and he moved back to New York, and he wound up meeting somebody who, an investment banker, very, very wealthy, with a luxurious house out on the eastern end of Long Island in the Hamptons. The guy was looking for a caretaker, an assistant, personal valet type, somebody who would take care of the house when he wasn't there, make sure that the kids got back and forth to school, etc. And he wound up living in those mansions on the Upper East Side of Manhattan and in the Hamptons, and taking the helicopter and the limo back and forth, and living this life of complete luxury without having to be the person who was funding that lifestyle. Somebody else was paying for it and was very grateful to have him there to take care of the things that he was doing. It fit perfectly for the idea that he had. There were some things that he got to let go of along the way. It was not his house. He was not completely in control of that, and he was okay with that. He gave up the life of addiction and alcoholism, and he was okay with that too. It was a transformation in his lifestyle, but he was ready to let it go. And the point isn't that you have to go work as a valet or a nanny for somebody else. The point is that there is transformation that's possible for all of us in our own way, without necessarily being the way that we would describe or define or explain or specify it if we were doing that on our own. Which brings us to the fifth P. And this is the one that actually happens before we get into the prayer. It's a fifth and a sixth P. The first of the spares, the pre-prayer P's. The one is our purpose statement. Before we do a prayer, we need to be very clear about what the purpose of the prayer is. Once this prayer has worked, what will my life experience be? What will the transformation look like? How will I describe that to other people? The purpose of the prayer is what sets up the prayer. Because if I just go barrel into a prayer, having an experience that I've been having, going, yeah, I kind of know what I mean, and I want it to be better, and I kind of know what I mean, we're not clear. It's like doing a prayer to say, I want to have money, or doing a prayer that says, I want to be happy. Seems like it would be fine. And if you think about yourself right now, you have some money. It might not be as much as you would require to live the lifestyle that you want to have, but you have some money. Same thing with happiness. Even people who are miserable have some happiness. And praying for happiness is like going on to Amazon.com and putting in an order for something nice and committing yourself to be okay with whatever it is that shows up. It's not going to be your nice. You need to identify what it is that you want to be bringing into your life. You need to know what the purpose of your prayer is. Once that order shows up, what does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? How does it fit? All those things. We need to identify what the success metric is. And that's the first P. That's the purpose of the prayer. And the second P is the pivot. We have been having an experience up until now, and we are aware that we want to have a different experience instead. So we need to be able to shift, to turn our attention, our awareness, and our consciousness away from the experience that we've been having so we can open it up to something new. What is that new experience that I want to have? We get to turn away from the darkness and turn toward the light. What is that new experience that I'm going to be inviting in? And then we get to go through the practical prayer process of recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release to invite that new experience into our lives. And the amazing thing is that it works. The process works. The technique works. Practical prayer actually works. And there are lots and lots and lots of people who have stories of prayer working in their lives. And you can have that too. It is a very, very simple process that anybody can do. It is not necessarily easy to do, but it is very simple. So we're going to take another break. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a practical prayer on each of us being able to overcome whatever those challenges are to step up our lives into a practical prayer practice that's working even better. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at bethelight.com. That's b-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at bethelight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class. Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Bill Marcioni, running solo today. Carol Lawrence has the day off, so I have the opportunity to talk about practical prayer and to do a practical prayer on my own. The topic today is simple, but not easy. And the process, the technique of practical prayer is very simple. It's a few simple steps that allow us to invite in transformation, to partner with the infinite creative power that creates everything and bring newness and transformation into our lives. Before we do the prayer, we need to set the intention for that which we wish to bring into our lives. That's the purpose of the prayer. And in some cases, we get to look at what we've been experiencing up until now and turn away from that so we can turn to the newness that we are inviting in. Sometimes the unhappy experiences that we've had are clues and guidance and a nudge in the direction that we want to be moving. So we allow that experience to give us a pivot, to let us turn to that new experience that we are inviting in. And once we have that purpose in mind, we turn our attention to that infinite creative power, that one divine presence, that one love that creates everything. We call it spirit or God or nature. We call it the Big Bang. It is that one divine power and presence, the one that shares itself as and through and in all of its creation, the one that has been creating since the very beginning of time, the one that shares itself as and through and in all of its creation. Everything, everywhere, is that one divine presence taking its own form. That everything includes me. It includes each one within the sound of my voice. We are each individualizations of that one divine presence, each endowed with that same creative power, that consciousness that allows us to choose the newness that we are inviting in, to let go of what is no longer serving us, to set the intention for that good, and let loose that creative power to create all of it. That power abides within. So the claim that I'm making right here and right now is that each of us, in our own way, as we pivot to that new experience that we are desiring, that we are inviting, that we are opening to, that we are releasing what's no longer working, that we are moving beyond any limitations, any doubt, any hesitation that we've had previously, and opening even more fully into that new possibility. And knowing without question, doubt, or hesitation that that infinite creative power, that one divine source that shares itself as everything, is sharing itself as this goodness right here and right now. This good that we are seeking is at hand. And the wonderful part is there is nothing that stands in the way of that one infinite creative power. As we get out of the way, as we let go of our own limitations, the good unfold, the love is at hand. The stories are even now beginning to be told about all of this goodness coming about. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the willingness of each one to release the doubt, to let go of the limitations of the past, to open to the possibilities of the future, to claim that goodness that can be available and know that it's already unfolding. I am grateful for the good that's already happening. I'm grateful for the creative process that lets me speak this word and activate that creative power. I'm grateful for the good that's already coming about. And so with gratitude for all this good, I speak this word and I release it into that creative law that creates everything. And I know that it's now creating this. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com,
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.